Yeah, yeah. Or text whatever it was. You can try it in the car. I should drive the drive. One now and one after. Yes. And are yellow. Friday, every 27th. Yeah. And also had, yeah, so what can I tell them? It was intentional. Yeah, it was intentional for that. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's in my calendar because yeah.
נכתב לדוד שמרני על כי חסיבך אמרתי לאדוני אדוני אתה טבעתי בא אליך לקדושים אשר בארץ המה אדירי כל חפציבם ייבאו עצבותם אחר מהרו בל אשיך נזכיהם מדם ובכל עשה את שמותם על שפתי אדוני מענת חלקי וחוסי אתה תמיך גורלי חבלים נפלו לי בעמינים אף נחלת ספרה עלי אברכך את אדוני אשר יצאני אף ללילות יסרוני כלותי שביתי אדוני לגדי תמיד כי ממני אל Bal emot, lechen samach libi v'yagal kavodi, af besari v'yishkon levetach, ki leta'azov nafshi, לשאול, לא תיתן חסידך לרוץ שעה אחת, תודיעני אורך חיים. שבע שמחות את פניך, נעימות בעיניך נצח.
Halacha compels us to do two things at the moment. One is to give permission to grieve, literally to bring sadness from a simmer to a boil. But the other also is to celebrate a life. And I'm not sure there's a better way to ever celebrate someone's life than to be able to have his children and grandchildren be able to speak on his behalf. And so I'd like to invite Yosef to share with us a hesped, a eulogy.
In the Ethics of the Father, it states, Kol sheruach habres noicha hamenu, ruach hamachon noicha hamenu. Anyone who's liked by people can know that Hashem likes them. Grandpa, everybody loved you. There's not anyone who could have a complaint against you. You lived only to make other people happy and to amuse them and to entertain them. I remember every Erev Shabbos on Fridays I would call my grandfather and we'd speak for a long time. I really enjoyed our phone calls. He used to sometimes return the call, and I would intentionally not pick up because he'd leave me a voice message I could listen to for weeks and still get that's the laugh from. I remember when I first told him that my father-in-law, I told him I was engaged, he asked me what my father-in-law did. So I told him my father-in-law he's in the matzah business. So he told me, oh, that's amazing. Your mom makes a mean matzo ball soup. You can go into business together. I'm really going to miss all those Erev Shabbos phone calls. I'm really happy that 3 months ago you were able to come celebrate my wedding with me. And so all my siblings wrote a little something, so I'm going to start with Baruch Nissen. My memories of Grandpa generally consist of two separate ideas. There's Grandpa, who's always trying to make everyone laugh with a funny joke or antic. And there's Grandpa worried about me for my safety, always checking where I am and what I'm doing. Whether I was in LA, New Jersey, or Israel, it was always the same. Be careful out there, you know. There are a lot of bad actors out there. He would always ask me how my studies are going, and if I was going to become a rabbi like my father. While not religious himself, he always seemed incredibly proud of us and the lives we were living, telling me more than once how he wished his grandparents could see us, and how happy they were, and how happy they would be to see that we were religious. He loved Jewish food. Whenever we'd speak on Friday, he would tell me how lucky I was that soon I'd be getting chicken soup with matzo balls. I love you, Grandpa, and I'll miss you so much. From Riva. Grandpa ended every sentence with a laugh, and he tried to make everyone laugh, and for him the same joke could work 100 times and still be funny. He always brought a container of jelly bellies whenever he came to visit. He loved and was so proud of his kids and grandkids. Every Hanukkah and every birthday he would send cards. This is especially sweet and exciting when most people don't send cards anymore. He left the best voicemails on Friday afternoons, and he gave me the best Shabbos wishes. He felt very protective of his kids and grandkids, especially when we were driving on road trips, but also me living in Brooklyn. He was insistent that I get a taser gun and comprised on a loud whistle. He was so quick with compliments and love. He just expressed how proud he was and didn't hold back. From Chassia. I don't remember seeing Grandpa without a smile ever. He always gave everyone the happiest face no matter what was going on in his life, because Grandpa loved making us and everyone he met smile and laugh. I remember when I was little, we would go to Vegas to visit Grandpa. We would go on family walks. Everyone we passed, he would say something to them, and without fail, their face would instantly light up. It didn't matter if they were businessmen on their way to important conferences or workers at the M&M store. People asking for money, even the people trying to scam us out of money, he always knew how to say something or to connect with every single person. I love that Grandpa was able to do that and make friends with so many people. I think that is why everyone loved Grandpa so much. There wasn't anyone whom my grandpa couldn't connect to and find something to talk about or make a joke that wouldn't make them laugh. He did this for strangers, but he especially did this for all his grandkids. He always made an effort to find things that were important or interesting to us and hear what was going on in our lives and take genuine interest in everything. He made an effort to connect with us on parts of our lives he knew were important and share them with us. He loved being part of our lives, and we know how proud he was of us. So, there's so much to say about my grandpa. I don't know where to start. The first thing that comes to mind was Grandpa, the smile on his face, and the jokes he made. Grandpa's voicemails always put a smile on my face, and I always saved them to listen to them over and over again. I remember when Grandpa used to come to visit us in Vancouver, and every time he'd bring a big tub of Jolly Bellies, even though we hadn't finished the last one. He used to watch us play Monopoly and always have a funny comment to say, and telling Chassia she would be a good businesswoman. When we went to LA for Hanukkah or the summer going to Las Vegas, one of the highlights was especially going to see Grandpa and going out with him. He was a very kind person, and his neshama should have an aliyah. Zevi wrote, I never knew Grandpa like grandkids, but I knew a few things as facts aside from being father of one of the greatest role models, Rabbi Berger. I spoke to Grandpa for about an hour at Yosef's wedding, and something I love to do is ask people about their lives. Grandpa told me over the course of an hour everything from his parents getting to their house in Texas to living and selling houses in LA and ending up in Vegas. Whoever knew Grandpa knew how much he loved celebrities, but even that didn't even remotely compare to how much he loved his family, from his kids to grandkids and great-grandkids. Even one time, he was so worried about the safety of his kids and grandkids, when Chassi and I were going to drive up to Las Vegas, he made us promise not to come up because he had a bad dream that something would happen. Always calling, leaving goofy voicemails. We'll all miss him so much, and I'm so grateful I got to know him a little. It was worth it. May Grandpa's memory and his character trait of loving your family be carried on through all the Berger generations. I love you, Grandpa.
I'd like to invite Rabbi Berger to share his eulogy.
Thank you for everybody coming. Look, in Jewish tradition, as the rabbi pointed out, that the eulogy is not a secondary part of our funeral. It is actually the main part. Avraham, we learned from Avraham, who dropped everything to speak about the praises of his wife Sarah, and where we get the idea from. And as the rabbi pointed out, there's two main things. One is to point out the greatness of the person. The other one is to recognize the loss that's before us. And that's kind of what I want to do here today. The tradition is pretty careful that we're not supposed to exaggerate his greatness, because then you're not really speaking about him, and he may be wherever he is at the moment. It's like, that wasn't me. So I want to try and get to everything, his greatness, but also the loss that it caused upon us, his departing. Also, the truthfulness, the real him, good, bad, and the difference, things that you'll see. And so please don't shock you when I talk about all sorts of aspects of my dad, because I think they're all a merit to his greatness. And the fact is that all of our sages have faults, and all of our sages have gone through tremendous struggles in order to be where they are today. And my dad was no different than any one of the sages of the stories about us. So it's not about perfection, really. It's about truth and gratitude for my dad. Okay. I want to begin with a story from the Talmud. This is a story that reminds me of my dad constantly. There's a story of a rabbi. The rabbi was walking through the shuk, walking through the marketplace. And the rabbi bumped into, we all know it through the Passover Seder, Eliyahu Hanavi. Just bumps into him. He says, hey, Eliyahu, how's it going? And he says, since he bumped into Eliyahu, he has a chance. He says, listen, I got a question for you, Eliyahu, since I've got you here. Who here in this marketplace is a Ben Olam Haba? The word Ben Olam Haba is a code name for basically means son of the next world. Somebody who's fitting to be a person ready to enter and to deserve the world to come. So Elijah looks around. Eliyahu looks around and says, there's nobody here. There's nobody. Oh, wait. There's two guys over there. Those two guys over there, they are Ben Olam Haba. So he looks at these guys. There's nothing special about them. Matter of fact, they're a bit of a jokester or whatever it was. Guys walking around making people laugh. And he walks up to them, quickly runs up to them and says, listen, I find out you guys are Ben Olam Haba. What is it that gives you merit? What is it that makes you so worthy of the next world? And they're looking at each other like they can't figure it out. We don't know what it is. And they say, well, if there's one thing that we do, we make people laugh. And if we see people who are sad and sorrow, it doesn't matter who they are, we try and cheer people up. And that was my dad. That was my dad. No matter what it was, is that as my son pointed out so aptly with the kids' observations, is that it didn't matter. He would talk to anybody at any time, and he would always try and cheer them up, whatever it may be. He was what the Torah would call an ish tam. What is an ish tam? So here's the deal. He hated machlokas. He didn't manipulate. He didn't enjoy conflict at all. He didn't need to win arguments, right? He was he was a simple guy. He was a very simple person, right? He wasn't the most smart. He wasn't the smartest person in the room. He wasn't the most polished person in the room, right? Sometimes you'd cringe sometimes with things he'd say. He wasn't the most professionally successful or productive, and his life did not hold together neatly. But he was gentle, he was kind, and he cared deeply about people and people's happiness. There are many things we hope in people, and if I had to put a poll of what's the most important thing, it's make sure that people are happy. For his part, his childhood, he was raised in Los Angeles, a little bit in Texas, but his mom loved moving around. She was a gypsy. That's a story for another time. But she loved going around from place to place. He got tired of moving around, decided to move to Los Angeles, stay in Los Angeles with his grandparents. And his grandparents were observant people, and he wasn't, and it's not something he wanted to do. But he lived with them until he was old enough to move out and join the army, etc. He was, how do I say this? He said to me when I was becoming observant, and he said it to my kids more often than not, almost every time, is that he wished that his grandparents could see us, experience us, and introduce ourselves to us. That we would have made them so happy knowing that even though none of their kids went in the way that they went, that the fact that they have grandkids that were observant today, it was always something. It was, and not only that, it bothered him in a certain sense, and it was like, he still wanted to make them happy even after their death. That's who he was. He wanted to please everybody, and he knew that perhaps the path that he chose didn't, but he knew that our path did, and he was hoping that they knew and understood. He loved film. Matter of fact, it was his life. You would catch him. The best birthday present you could give him was tickets, to go see films. That's what it was. The best compliment he would give you is when he met you, he'd say, "You look like a young Rock Hudson," or "You look like a young Paul Newman," or Elizabeth Taylor, right? Or Joan Fontaine, my wife was referred to as. That was something that was a compliment for him. That was it. That it's nice. Life resembles art. It did for him. He pulled his learnings out from movies and things. He was up till 2, 3 in the morning, always watching old war films, watching Nick at Night, the sitcoms and things like that. He got never tired of these things, and he loved. Wanted to introduce things to my kids wherever possible. So we tried to find movies that would fit for him and fit for us. And if you ever get a chance and you've ever watched the film, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. One of my dad's all-time favorites. And I showed it to him with my kids, and my kids loved it too. And it becomes a kind of one of those things that reminds us of each other. He also... He worked at the beginning of his career. He worked in the studios. It didn't fit well with my mom. My mom wanted him to become much more of a professional than what he was doing, and felt the studios were more of a fun thing rather than a good long-term profession. And so he became a property manager, but I don't think he ever had his heart in it. Whenever he could find a excuse to get out of the office and go visit a property, somewhere either on the way to the property that he'd be visiting or on the way back from the property, he would stop in for a matinee and go watch a film. Mom would find the ticket stubs in his face. Never accused him of cheating, but always accused him of going to a movie during his workday. That was something that created a little tension in the house. But that's who he was. He worked in the studio system for a little while. He volunteered. He worked on films. If you remember a film called, what was it? The Ocean 11. Not the remake, the original one. Also a film called The Towering Inferno. He helped build some of the models for that particular one. And he always told me a story about how he was driving off mail delivery, this and that. And he turned the corner. He was driving a little too fast and almost mowed down Frank Sinatra. Frank. And Frank had a few words to say for him what it was. They laughed and joked about it as my dad quickly eased his thing because he laughed with him, whatever it was. He was with Jerry Lewis and all the Rat Pack and whatever it was. And they're all making fun. It was one of his highlights at the end of the day, because I guess the story got back to the head of the studio, and the head of the studio wrote a letter or spoke to him in person. I can't tell him. Went up to my dad and said, "Please do me a favor, slow down. Try not to kill the talent." Right? So that was it. But Dad, he took these skills of model making and things, and he took them in his life, because one of his favorite holidays was Halloween. It was Halloween because he got a chance to deck out the whole house and all sorts of horror things, whatever it was. He was, he wants to put on a show. He wants to entertain. He wants to scare, wants to engage. And the whole house, we'd be in charge of the bats and the sound effects, those records with the multiple sound effects on little tracks. We still had record players, and doing that, trying to time it up, everything. He had everybody working for him, letting the bats go at certain times, letting this go at that, sound effect go at a certain time, doors creaking at certain times, doors slamming at certain times. And when he made the kids cry, dressed up as, Frankenstein, and my dad made a good Frankenstein. When he dressed up as Frankenstein, he would scare the bejesus out of these kids. And in the end, when the kid would be crying, he'd take off the mask and say, "I'm so sorry," kind of like that. "Forgive me, we're not here to eat you. Don't worry about it." That was kind of my dad, and it's just, he loved having good fun, and sometimes didn't know the limits. But that was what it is. But he put on a show. Fireworks too, right? The fireworks. Was never great at it, never proficient at it, but we always had the big fireworks display on the 4th of July. And no doubt that we always rogue fireworks. They got loose of the things that they were supposed to get rid of. He'd light too many, they'd be too close, whatever it was. He was the reason they created a fire ban in Los Angeles, I believe. But anyway, it was never never wanting to end the party and not entertain. And he wanted people to enjoy themselves. He loved cars. Cars were his art form for him. He sold cars, one of his professions. He got in that as well. There were the grandchildren. When the grandchildren came around, he adored them. He loved them. He lived for them. He couldn't wait to call them all the time. He wanted to see them at every moment he could. He always played the same. Every time he called, they'd say, "Grandpa." They'd say, "Wait a sec. I'm Grandpa. Are you Grandpa?" And then he'd be back and forth. "Wait, you're Grandpa?" He said, "No, Grandpa, you're Grandpa." He said, "Sure, you just said you're Grandpa." And this would be like, as they're little, it still went on into the teens, and as they kept going. And this is what it was. He was also a constant worrier. And as Joseph pointed out, he worried about everything. He worried, as I said before, one day, Riva was off to New York and Brooklyn, and she'd be riding the subway, and that was just too much for him to handle. So he says, "I'm buying you a taser gun." And he's like, "No, I don't want a taser gun, Grandpa." And she says, "Well," they finally settled. He bought her a whistle, like a big loud whistle, whatever it was, to take with her at all times. He'd always call her and ask, "Do you have the whistle with you? I want to hear it," kind of thing. And he made sure. And by the way, he slipped in my house and he left me a taser gun. So never used it. I forgot where it was, but it's somewhere in the house. There is a taser that he's been asking me about. He wanted me to take on all my trips, especially when we were RVing out everywhere. He was worried. He was the kind of guy who, when he drove, he always made 3 right turns instead of making a left turn. That's kind of who he was. He was very super, super cautious of everything he did, because life for him was very important, and because not having it would be a lack of fun. and entertainment. So for him, it was a joy to be alive many times. So he wanted to make sure life was protected at all accounts. He used to always call us, interestingly, at the wrong time. So we went on lots of travels, for those who know us, to RV parks. We went to all sorts of RVing, along cliffs, whatever it was, big, grapevine. And whenever he called, we happened to be like on the worst part during the worst weather of whatever it was. And he'd ask, how are things going? What's going on? And we told him, he's like, be careful. It's a horrible place. The grapevine, you got to be careful there. Your car's going to overheat. It's dangerous. Go slow. There was all sorts of things. And after a while, we kind of, it became almost a laughing thing for us and I actually owe him forgiveness for this, is that I used to wait until we were like in the worst position and then try and call him and let him know where we were. And he's like, where are you guys? I'm like, well, let me tell you where we are. Let me send you a picture. And no doubt, if we coughed while eating, he would throw his chair back, get up. And he didn't know the Heimlich maneuver. He didn't know what he would do, but he was always worried that somebody was choking. And he just wanted to make sure everybody was cared for at any and all times. There was not a day that went by that he didn't think about the losses in his life, the things. My sister, for example, every time we met, the subject was brought up. Every time we talked, wonder what was she doing today, etc. That was a big part of his life and a big part of his loss. There was another side to him, a heavy one. Mental illness ran in his family, which was probably one of the reasons that made him want to have so much fun. His mother had it, his brother had it, and I don't know if he had it, but he definitely, it was a big part. I know that after the divorce, he went into deep depression, and I don't think any of us were handled or knew what to do about this particular thing. My mom kind of got custody of us, and Dad kind of just went off and did his own thing. There was no sharing rights or anything. It was a very sad moment, and it took him years. He tried to get into many things to get out of it. But it took a toll on him for many, many years until he was able to recover from these particular things. There was that, and it was and maybe that's one of the reasons he always wanted to make people laugh and keep people happy about these things. One of the most powerful moments that we shared, and I think was the turning point in our relationship, is something I'll share here. Please don't judge me too much. Is that my mom got remarried a few years after the divorce, and my dad got married about a year after that, 2 years after that. And my dad, whatever it was, to get him, he finally connected with somebody who helped him get out of the depression. She was not Jewish. And the question was, I went to my mom's wedding, and he asked me, he wanted me to fly in from Israel to his wedding. And I went to my rabbi, who I was learning with, and I asked him, and I said to him, I said, listen, I got this question here. I really do want to go. I don't want to disappoint him. I went to my mom's wedding. We married. What can I do here? So he said to me, look, I know there's this rabbi who's quite lenient about these things. We'll go talk to him about these particular things. It's a big issue. So I went to talk to this rabbi, and the rabbi, much to my rabbi's shock and to my shock, he said, absolutely not, you can't go. So immediately my rabbi said, what about the dancing or at least the afterwards, go to the meal? He said, absolutely not. The reason he gave was simply my brother and my sister, who was still alive at the time, were not yet married, and it'd be sending the wrong signal to them. If I went to that, they'd be saying it's okay, and that in the future I would go to theirs as well if they decided to do so. And my sister at the time was dating a non-Jew. So he said no, and my dad was waiting for an answer, and I had no courage to tell him. I stalled and stalled until one day I realized I couldn't stall anymore, and I called him, and he finally asked me about the wedding, what's going on with the wedding, and I said, Dad, listen, I want you to know it has nothing to do with our relationship. And I started getting into it, and he stopped me there, and he said, I know you can't come. I know, that's what I was calling, and it's okay. and I want you to know that our relationship is still, if you want a relationship, I want a relationship. And I said, Dad, there's nothing more that I want, and I will do anything now, especially to build the relationship and strengthen our relationship. And I got to tell you, becoming an observant Jew helped me work on my kivud av and aim a lot. And I had none of it before, none, very, very little. And it really woke me up to the whole responsibility of such a thing. And because of this particular one event and not wanting to hurt him, and he had a tremendous respect, and he wanted me to be happy and he didn't want his marriage to interfere with my personal growth, which was like the most selfless thing that I could imagine. It blew me away. Like I had never seen this side of my dad before. And it was his, again, he wanted me to be happy, and he didn't want him to get in the way of that happiness, which was my dad, So I started off this idea, who's a ben olam haba? Someone who makes other people happy, wants to partake in their joy, wants to give them joy. So my rabbi used to say that some people understand the word ben olam haba as somebody who's ready for the next world. And my Rav said it's not really the simple understanding of the verse. The simple understanding of the verse is, it's not you prepared yourself and now you're ready for the next world. You're living in this world as a ben olam haba. You're already living olam haba in this world. And that was him. He was already trying to live that world, that next world, that happiness, and bring happiness to people, and that kind of eternal bliss. That was his goal for people and his goal for himself. He wanted happiness to pervade everywhere and wanted none of the things about machlokas, none of that stuff, right, to get in the way of these particular things. So he was striving for it, and I think in many ways he lived it, and he certainly exemplified it, and I learned a lot from my dad. Despite being an ishtam, a simple person, I learned a very lot from him, and I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss him a lot. And thank you guys, by the way. You know, Vegas may be a nice place to visit. It's not a nice place to live. And it's certainly not a place to spend your eternal. And I didn't want that for my dad. And I thought, where can I? You know, there's LA. There's all sorts of other places that I lived. My mom being there. And I thought this place is the closest to home that I've got. And I think that, thank you for Anna for coming out today. It was very important you guys came. Thank you.
Shir kochacha. The last time I saw your father, Sam Berger, was at Yosef's wedding. Gotten there a little bit early because I'm just nervous about traffic and all those kinds of things. So I drove up from Baltimore and I pulled in, and there was Sam, and he, exactly as everyone described, big smile on his face, striking up conversation, just wants to make you feel good. And it's interesting, there's a book that was written in Turkey, the Pela Yoetz. It's Rav Papo who writes a book about character development and the right way to do things. And for those of you for whom the songs of benching are in your head, right? Limtzachem v'seichel tov b'nei Elokim ve'adam. That the goal is you want to find chen, grace, kindness, and good company in the eyes of God and in the eyes of man. So he has a bit of a meditation on this whole question about what that's meant to be. And he is clear that there is a version of comedy which makes people smile, but it's also offensive, right? There's a part of comedy which is satire, making fun of other people. This is I don't think I'm treading on novel ground here. But what he does say is that this idea of making other people smile is an embodiment of a kind of a chesed. And the Chavetz Chaim talks about, interestingly, chesed, kindness, as an activity that you have to do in person. And there are different kinds of chesed that might manifest. Chavetz Chaim's examples are attending a wedding, in fact, even attending a funeral, just being there to be company for another person. But laughter is perhaps just a step above that, because laughter is a way for people to connect, maybe just a little bit more than just sitting next to each other, perhaps even a little bit more than conversing with each other. Because when two people laugh, they're in a way they're sharing something. There is a connection there. There is a way where they're synchronized as they wouldn't be otherwise. And Sarah was good enough to share with me some of the reflections of some of Sam's neighbors and friends. And I'm sorry that I never got to see the Jerry Lewis impersonation, but it was apparently famous, and that he was not ashamed of doing the same jokes over and over again, and they always made him laugh again. And so that ability to not have the self-consciousness to be worried about yourself laughing or repeating jokes, but that those jokes are a way of, if you will, ritualistically getting everybody to laugh and have them connect with you. I think that there's something about that which is, there's a certain chesed in that disposition, and I think it's certain something to recognize that that's who he was. And all of his friends, to a person, said that from the days of when he was in high school to his last years, that was his character through and through and through, is just helping other people to laugh. But when I sat with yesterday with Yosef for just a minute, we talked a little bit about how he wanted to be misamech other people. Sam wanted to be someone who made other people glad. But then he said the other thing which really just defined my grandfather is how proud he was of the family. That he lived with such tremendous pride over his children and grandchildren. And I just thought I would add one little piece of Torah to this. So the Rambam says that there are 3 crowns that were given to the Jewish people. B'shlosha ketarim nichtaru Yisrael. Keter Torah, Keter Kahuna, the Keter Malchut. So you can have, there's the crown of kingship, there's the crown of Kahuna, but there's the crown of Torah. And the crown of Torah is very interesting, because the crown of Torah is Keter Torah harehu munach v'omed umuchan lakol. It's there, it's open for anyone to take. Kol mi sheyirtze yavo v'yito. Anybody who wants to can come and take it. And the Rambam, of course, finishes by saying that the HaTorah gadol mi keter kahuna v'keter malchut, that the crown of Torah is greater than all of them. And Sam was zocha to have something that I think a lot of people would be very jealous of. That he has, his grandchildren are not only passionate about Judaism and passionate about Torah, they're all figuring out how they can continue to expand. They all have a little bit of that beautiful Sam smile, but it's now also combined with deep education and a deep passion to serve and to help the community. And I think you can see the elevation of Sam's quality, that he wanted to make people happy just in his company, and he raised children who do that for a whole community. And his grandchildren have taken that, synthesized it together, woven it together, and made it into something absolutely beautiful with so much promise and so much energy and vitality in it. And I think that he is sitting right now with so to speak, the crown on his head. He said, you know what, I may not have lived like a king. I certainly wasn't a Kohen, but the Keter Kahuna I was able to bequeath. I was able to support. I was able to see that come to fruition in banim uvnei banim, in my children and my grandchildren. And I think it's an absolutely beautiful thing, and he had every reason to be extremely proud. Shetei nishmato tzura b'tzura chaim. May his soul be bound in the bond of eternal life. Ask everyone now to rise for the Kel Malei Rachamim.
Eile moli rachamim, shoichein bam roemim. Hamitzei menucha nechoino, tachas kanfei ashechino. B'malois kedoshim utoirim, kizoyam orakiyam azirim. Esni Ishmas, Reb Shmuel ben Avraham, sheholach le'olamoi, Beganei Eden temenu chosoi, Lachem balu rachamim, Yastireu b'seisi kinofo, Le'olamim. V'yisroi b'yisroi rachayim es nishmasoi, Adonai hu nachalosoi. V'yonuach b'shalom al mishkavoi, v'noimar Amen.
God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant fitting rest beneath the sheltering wings of the divine presence, where the souls of the holy and pure ones, whose radiance is like that of the heavens, reside, to the soul of Shmuel ben Avraham, who has gone to his eternal reward, and for whose memory we pray. May the Garden of Eden be his resting place. For this reason, may the ever merciful one shelter him under God's protective wings forever. And may God bind his soul in the bond of eternal life. For the Lord will surely be his benefactor, so that he can rest in peace in his allotted place. And let us say, Amen. I'll ask you to be seated for just a moment for a couple of housekeeping announcements, and then we'll continue to the interment. So the Shiva Shiva visitations and minyanim will take place at the Berger home, which is caddy corner from GF Strong. The minyanim will be both in the evening and in the morning. The evenings will be at 4:45 p.m. Mornings will be at 7 a.m. And of course, Shiva visitations will take place in between those two windows as well, perhaps a little bit after Mariv as well. That will take place through Monday morning. Monday morning will be the last of the minyanim. We now transition to what is the formal part of a Jewish funeral. The word for funeral in Hebrew is halvaya, which means to escort someone. And Rabbi Berger has done quite an escorting job. He literally got off a plane on Thursday and then had to turn around, go to L.A. Sarah was in Cleveland. They're sort of planes, trains, and automobiles version of Get Sam Home. So they certainly have earned their miles in this. We are here for the last steps, to be with Sam for the final steps. But your presence walking behind the casket is actually an act of devotion. We will pause 7 times on our way to graveside. This represents that we do not go with any joy, but there's a certain reluctance to say goodbye. I ask the pallbearers now to step forward, give the family a moment to grab their coats, and then we'll continue with the halvaya.